Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, the first official Nebraska Power Hour every Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. The boys are going to take a deeper dive within this Nebraska program. One, we love talking this Nebraska team, but I think more importantly, the amount of support y'all continue to show to the fellas, it means the absolute world. So we're going to set a standard Wednesday episode dedicated to this Nebraska team where we might dive into some film we saw in the previous week, break down the next matchup we see on the slate, variety of different things. Now, you look at the storylines heading into week one against UTEP, I think they're pretty clear. One, want to get into the expectations that we have for true freshman quarterback Dylan Raiola, and then more importantly, talk about a couple surprise players that I think emerge for this Nebraska program week one against UTEP. Really excited to get into it. Now, before we do, and as always, to the Nebraska fans, can't thank you guys enough for all the support. We love talking this program. The amount of support means the absolute world. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to hear how you guys are feeling in terms of year one, game one expectations for Dylan Raiola. I'm going to give you my take, and it starts with, look, the expectations I think should be pretty high. I'm active on Twitter, active on the message boards. I see what Nebraska fans are saying, and there are some who believe that, hey, year one, freshman quarterback, we should temper the expectations for Dylan Raiola in this offense. And look, I kind of understand that point of view. I would look at the expectations that Dylan has for himself, that Matt Rhule has for Dylan, that this Nebraska program has for Dylan as well. I think the expectations are high. And you look at how we've talked about Dylan, even going back to him being a junior in high school or a senior in high school, we kind of said not only does this kid have exceptional arm talent at the quarterback position, we always said even when he committed to Georgia, this kid's going to be ready to play early on in his college football career because he's an elite processor. You talk about the intangibles that he has between the ears. You go back to the senior year, only throwing one interception. This kid's ready to play college football. And so I think you get into the expectations and say, yeah, I don't blame Nebraska fans for having high expectations for Dylan Raiola. I have high expectations for him. I think he himself has high expectations. And I think week one against UTEP, you get a real good opportunity to come on and put together a very solid performance against a UTEP defense that I think Nebraska should be able to move the football, relatively routinely. There's some expectations about this Nebraska program week one. You have some people saying, hey, just win this football game. I don't think so. I think the expectation is go win this football game soundly. Go play and execute football at a high level on Saturdays. That should be the expectation because you look at week two, you're playing Colorado. That is going to be a very tough game, at home, night game. You want to start playing your best football early in the season. Now, getting into what we want to see from Dylan, to evaluate his performance in the offense, I'm personally I shouldn't say not concerned, but not that concerned with what the stat line looks like in terms of how many passing yards he throws for, how many passing touchdowns he has, what's the completion percentage. Yeah, we want to see him light up the box score, but I think what we're really looking for is what Dylan Raiola can provide to this Nebraska offense. Is he operating the offense cleanly? Are guys getting set? Are guys picking up blitzes? Is the ball coming out on time, accurately to your playmakers in space? One of the things we're most excited for in terms of Dylan taking over this Nebraska offense is, opening up this Nebraska offense a little bit more. Coach Satterfield just talked about in the press conference, there are throws that we can ask Dylan to make that, quite frankly, we just couldn't ask the quarterbacks in 2023 to make. The run game should get better when you have a quarterback that can push the ball down the field. So some of the things that we're looking for, I'm a little bit less concerned with what the stat line reads and a little bit more concerned with how this Nebraska offense looks with Dylan Raiola at the helm. Things that we need to have for Dylan to be successful, one, a really good run game. That's probably the thing I'm looking for the most. You look at getting a year one quarterback comfortable quickly. I think it starts with giving it a good run game, right? Being on schedule, 2nd and 5s, 3rd and 2s, continuing to keep that playbook open. The worst thing you can do for a young quarterback is get that quarterback in a lot of 3rd and long, obvious passing situations where defenses can start the scheme, get a little bit more complicated. You want to keep this Nebraska offense on schedule. I'm looking for Nebraska to really establish that run game against UTEP, and that should translate to Colorado week 2. And I think secondly, let's push the ball down the field. You look at Dylan and what probably is his best attribute at the quarterback position. It's throwing the deep ball. I don't think there was a freshman quarterback that has a bigger arm and more accurate pushing the ball down the field than Dylan is. This is a huge storyline for Nebraska because you go back to 2023, Nebraska just really didn't have any sort of threat pushing the football 20 plus yards down the field. And what was a result of that is defenses continued to give Nebraska loaded boxes. It became awfully hard to run the football into those loaded boxes. It kind of just became a one-dimensional offense because Nebraska couldn't push the ball down the field. I think there might be some people concerned with, hey, we don't want to put that on the film. I'd say put it all over the film because you want Colorado going into week 2 saying, hey, we can't roll our safeties into the box because Dylan just showed that he's going to punish us if we do put 7-8 guys in the tackle box. You have some legitimate difference makers at the wide receiver position, specifically wide receivers that can work vertically down the field. Isaiah Neyor averaged 20 yards per catch the last season. We saw him healthy at Wyoming. These are guys that I think really fit how Dylan wants to throw the football, specifically vertically down the field. I wouldn't shy away from putting the vertical passing attack on the film against UTEP because I think that changes how defenses have to approach this Nebraska offense going forward. Now, getting into a few surprise players, and again, I would love to hear from the Nebraska fans here. Want to highlight, 5 guys that I think we see play at UTEP and say, hey, we're probably going to have to get them on the football field a little bit more. I'm going to go to the true freshman linebacker, Vincent Shavers, who everything you read coming out of spring, fall camp, this kid's a dude. And I think what's so fascinating about Vincent Shavers specifically going into the week 2 matchup against Colorado, Vincent Shavers is probably your best linebacker in space, right? 6'1", 225, played the running back position at the high school level. This kid can cover ground, can close the distance between himself and pass catchers and ball carriers at an extremely high level. You look at Vincent Shavers and John Bullock and that dynamic. You look at that week 2 matchup against Colorado. If Vincent Shavers can show that you can trust him on the football field, he's probably the better linebacker to play against Colorado because, hey, Colorado's going to run 4 wide receivers. They're going to try to spread you out and attack the space on the defense. You want linebackers that can match up with tight ends, that can match up with slot wide receivers, that can tackle running backs in the flat. Vincent Shavers is that kind of linebacker. You look at John Bullock, he's a little bit more of a box linebacker. When you play the Iowa Hawkeyes, you're probably going to play John Bullock a lot. But when you play a team like Colorado or a team like Oregon or Ohio State, you want a little bit more athleticism at the linebacker spot. I think that's something Nebraska has struggled with in the past. Vincent Shavers, even as a true freshman, has that kind of athleticism. If he shows against UTEP that he is a disciplined football player that's not going to blow assignments, I think he can be a difference maker for this Nebraska defense. Going to number 2 and probably one of my personal favorite players on this Nebraska roster, I'm going to go with Riley Van Poppel. We've spent an extensive amount of time during the offseason talking about the depth on the inside of Nebraska's defensive line, and it just wasn't good enough last year. You had Ty, you had Nash. They were forced to play because the depth behind them wasn't all that great. You take Ty and Nash off the field, and there was a significant drop-off in level of play. Riley Van Poppel played a lot as a true freshman. As a 6'7", 280-pound soaking wet true freshman in the Big Ten on the middle of the defensive line, he's up to 295 pounds. This kid plays his absolute tail off. You talk about some depth that can emerge for Nebraska on the defensive line. Riley Van Poppel, I'd probably throw in Elijah Judy as well. If you get some quality depth emerge for this Nebraska defensive line, you can maybe keep Ty Nash fresher in the 3rd and 4th quarter. I think that's going to matter for this Nebraska defense, and I'm really excited to see what the version of Riley Van Poppel we get coming into the 2024 season, because I think he can be a difference maker on the inside of the defensive line. Last one on the defense that I want to talk about, Cam Leonard, the guy that, struggled with injuries during his freshman year, guy that we were supremely excited about heading into 2023. He's had a healthy offseason. He's put on a little bit more weight. This kid's a hammer against the run. Even as a true freshman who might have been a little physically underdeveloped, he's extremely strong. He sheds blocks exceptionally well, but also gives you some of that pass rush juice. I'm really excited about the dynamic of Jamari Butler and Cam Leonard and how they're getting moved all over the defensive line. Those are, 2 guys that are getting a lot of buzz during fall camp. Again, I think you're seeing Matt Rhule just get better, not only better players, but better quality depth on the defensive line. I'd probably throw in Principal U to that story, as well as arguably the most talented pass rusher that this Nebraska defensive line might have. Those are my eyeballs, are when it is 3rd and long, who are your pass rushers that can really win? Or are we going to have to be relying on setting linebackers? That was something that we've talked about as well. Last year, as good as this Nebraska defense was, there's steps to get even better. I think one starts with being a little less reliant on sending safeties and linebackers on blitzes to affect the quarterback. The development of Jamari Butler and Cam Leonard and Prince Will U, it's going to be huge for this Nebraska defense in 2024. Now, going to the offensive side of the football, I think the biggest storyline is who emerges in the running back room. And Matt Rhule was pretty vocal that, hey, we got 4 running backs that we like a lot, but we don't want to be cycling 4 running backs throughout the duration of the 2024 season. We want to find the hot hands and run with the hot hands. What running back emerges as the running back that Nebraska is looking for? I've been kind of banging the table. I like a bunch of the running backs, right? Emmett Johnson, Ramir Johnson, Dante Dowdle. I think you legitimately have 4 very capable running backs, but I'm going to go to Gabe Bvin. Why I'm going with Gabe Bvin is at 6 foot 220. He looks even. This kid, I don't know. I'm sure the Nebraska fans have seen the pictures of Gabe Bvin. This kid is absolutely put together. In my mind, we go back to the conversation we had about Dylan and how do we get him comfortable in this Nebraska offense. I think it first starts with a run game that stays on schedule. What running back is best situated to have 2nd and 5s and have 3rd and 2s? I would argue it's Gabe Bvin. I mean, this kid was really good before he got hurt last year. You go back to last year, 37 rushing attempts. He forced 11 missed tackles. He averaged 5.5 yards per carry, almost 4 yards after contact per carry. Gabe Bvin is, at least in my opinion, the type of running back that Matt Rhule is looking for in this Nebraska offense. A healthy Gabe Bvin, I think, takes over this running back room. And again, Matt Rhule is looking for what running back is going to take over the room. A healthy Gabe Bvin, I think, is going to be that running back going into the last player to watch, and that is Hrk Harber. And this is a guy that you talk about. All right, he's quarterback too. I see both sides of this, right? How much do we play Hrk? Do we give him some packages? Coach Satterfield said it yesterday. Hrk's a guy that he's too good of an athlete to keep off the football field. How are we going to use him? That's probably the biggest question mark a lot of Nebraska fans have. And look, I'm kind of with you in terms of you have this 5-star quarterback that everything we've heard is that he's going to be very good. Do you want to really keep him off the field or take him off the field? I get that argument, but he's also a freshman. This could also help slow the game down for Dylan, have him come to the sideline, talk to Coach Satterfield or Glenn Thomas, specifically in the red zone, though. When it gets harder to throw the football, the passing lanes are a little bit scrunched down. Could Hrk Harber be that in a red zone package when it's 1st and goal from the 6 and it's hard to throw the football into not a lot of grass and space? This kid could be a difference maker in the red zone. You go back to Nebraska last year, they were brutal in the red zone, 115th in red zone efficiency. It needs to get better. You talk about if you want to win 9-10 football games, you have to execute in the red zone. You can't settle for field goals. You certainly can't turn the football over. I'm not saying Hrk Harber needs to throw any footballs, but you get him in the backfield and let him get downhill. We all know what he can do. You've heard the Nebraska players on defense say tackling Hrk when he's getting downhill is something nobody wants to do. I look at it and say, well, football is about getting your best football players on the field in situations where they can excel. I think that's a situation where Hrk can excel. Now, Matt Rhule made a really good point. Hey, he's also our quarterback too. We don't want our quarterback too taking a ton of hits. Look at Hrk and say he's 6'5", he's 200 and I think 25 pounds. I think he can handle a little bit of that workload in terms of running the football. I think that's going to be a fascinating storyline to watch as well week 1 against UTEP. Those are my 5 surprise players, guys, to keep an eye out for this Nebraska program. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Appreciate y'all rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.